Good morning, everyone. This is Ryder, the Pacific Northwest wine novice, just checking in on a wonderful Wine Wednesday. Talking a little bit about the 2019 vintage and the challenge it presented towards the end of the year. It is now about late October 23rd to be exact, and we are pretty much towards the back end of fruit coming in, and yeah, it's been a hard push this year. So early, not early, but typical bud break led to a typical flowering year, and warm weather kept the vines moving along the entire season, which was great. Never got too hot, never got too cold, so the vines stayed at a nice optimal temperature the entire time, able to produce phenolically ripe wine early on in the harvest part of the season, which made us able to harvest when the critical weather hit this year. We had two major events that happened this year. We had snowfall and a frost on September 30th. That didn't really affect our vineyards or our wine too much, but certainly woke us up to what was going on and the trend that we might be seeing this year. But prior to that, good vineyard practices, thinning at the right time, making sure that we had good exposure for the sunlight, being smart and being attentive in the vineyard really led us to the success that we'll see this year. So the second event that happened was a heavy frost that came in October 9th. This is about the same time that we saw this event happen back in 2009. What this meant for us is that we wanted to get all of the premium fruit in that we could at that point, which made for a very hard push at the winery. We typically do about 20 to 25 tons on a busy day at J. Bookwalter Winery. And on the big push this year, we did about 50 tons. That is a very long day for the cellar crew and for the winemakers. But more than that, it is a giant game of Tetris when it comes to the ferments. We ferment in open top fermenters, about 1.5 to 2 ton fermenters, which means there's a lot of them going if you're bringing in 60, 50 tons of fruit. So that has been the challenge this year so far. Moving a lot of things around, keeping the floor clean, and having space for the new fruit that's coming in after that. It has been a challenge, and our winemakers and our cellar team have put forth their best effort, and it is going to be a very, very fun vintage, I think. Typically speaking, we hit sugar degrees or sugar bricks of around 25, 26, 27 bricks even at times. And that's when we will typically harvest our fruit. This year, trending all over Washington, we're seeing a little bit lower bricks, which means that we will have a little bit lower alcohol wine for the first time in the better part of a decade. The warming trend that we have seen since basically 2012, after the two cold years of 2010 and 2011. So that warming trend we've seen through 2012, basically through 2018, peaking in 15, but then cooling off a little bit, but still very warm 2016, 2017, 2018, means that we had high sugar levels and phenolic ripeness at a higher sugar level. That means higher alcohol wine. So I'm excited. I like a little bit lower alcohol wine. I like to be able to sip a little longer and not really feel the effects of the alcohol. For me, I drink wine to enjoy the flavor of wine, not for the drunk or in the buzz of wine. So I'm extremely excited for the 2019 vintage. The wines that I personally like to drink will not be ready for a year and a half, 2 years at least. They need a little bit of time and some barrels and that kind of thing. So I'm very much looking forward to a few different wines from a few different wineries, but J. Bookwalter in particular, I am looking forward to this year's volume series and chapter series. I think they're both going to be extremely interesting and age-worthy wines, not to mention they will be incredibly opulent and wonderful and big broad wines, which is kind of our style with J. Bookwalter. So I'm super excited for that. Another few wines that I'm very excited for are the wines that are going to be coming out of the Rocks District this year. I mean, I'm I'm always giddy for the rocks. I'm kind of a rocks fanatic to begin with. But this year in particular, with those lower sugar levels, I'm super excited. I just read a vintage report from Trey Bush, Sleight of Hand Cellars, and everything he was saying in that vintage report has me excited and is completely on trend for this year. It was good vineyard practices in that area, and it was harvesting fruit at lower sugar levels. So super excited. I think it's going to be a very, very fun vintage to drink, and I think it's going to be a very fun vintage to hold on to. So I think you should be on the lookout for the 2019 wines coming up in early 2020, 2021, maybe even 2022, depending on how long people age their wines. But these are going to be very interesting, very, very fun wines, and I think that's an exciting time for Washington. I would not wish this kind of chaos in future seasons, though I would wish for the same kind of sugar levels and the same phenolic ripeness, because, like I said, those lower alcohol levels just make for a very fun, very interesting wine that has age worthiness, that doesn't have the high degrees of alcohol, that's just in balance. You can make higher alcohol wines in balance. That's certainly, we've seen that with Washington for the better part of a decade with the kind of quality that comes out of here. So that's not really the issue. Like I said, it's just the being able to drink them a little longer and enjoy them a little more with your family, and get to that second or third bottle in the evening with a group of people. That's going to be a really fun part of this year's trend. I'm looking forward to it. I think that there's going to be some really fun, interesting wines that come out this year. I'm really excited for the Psychedelic from Sleight of Hand. I'm really excited for what Richard Funk is doing with Savaya Cellars. I believe this is the third year that Stony Vine will produce fruit. And also the Funk Estate Vineyard is always an iconic vineyard. They didn't see any freeze. The Rocks District tends to get hit hard with frosts, and certain areas certainly did this year, but other areas remained wonderful and bright and vibrant, and that's pretty exciting. I think that we've kind of dialed in how to adjust the temperature a few degrees. I know that sounds like a crazy concept, but we do have the ability to kind of manipulate Mother Nature a little bit with the practices in the vineyard, from anything from low sprinkler irrigation to kind of pull the dew point down, to also the giant frost fans that pull the cold air up out of the vineyard and push the warm air back down into it, which is a really fun kind of cycling thing. It makes for a bit of a helicopter sound in your head when you're near them, and it can be a little bit deafening, but man, does it protect the fruit for a good 5, 6, 7 degrees, in that frost level, which is critical. So that's exciting. I'm always excited for what Washington wine is doing and where we're at on a global scale. I've said it before. I think we sit on the precipice of being absolutely great. I think that a lot of people don't know Washington wine yet because we don't have the distribution that a lot of big growing regions do. California, France, Bordeaux, the Rhone region, Spain, Italy. These are all big markets that have been doing it for a long time, that are very good at promoting their wine outside of their area. Washington wine still tends to be about 60-70% DTC, or direct-to-consumer wine purchases, which means it is being sold at the wineries to club members. It is being shipped out to club members, but it is not seeing the open market as much. Obviously, there's exceptions to that with distribution and that kind of thing, but we haven't seen that on a large trend yet. I think that is going to be part of the thing that sets us apart. I think we will stay predominantly DTC for a long time. I think we should hold on to that trend as long as we can. At the same time, it makes other people from other regions kind of not know about us in terms of a wine growing region. I had a couple folks in the tasting room yesterday that were from Napa area, and they were planning on moving up to Washington, just trying to get out of the hustle and bustle of California. And one of the things they were looking at was trends for areas like traffic, like housing prices, and wine regions and microbreweries and that kind of thing. And Tri-Cities, Washington was checking all their boxes, so they decided to make a trip up there. I was the first tasting room they visited, on their trip to Washington, and they were blown away by Washington wine. They had no idea that this kind of quality could happen up there. They were your classic California people that say, oh, California, we're from Napa and we know wine, and yeah, you're not going to beat us in terms of what we're doing. But lo and behold, they were shocked, blown away. And one of the things that they did mention is that while the quality is on par with Napa, if not exceeding Napa in terms of Cabernets and in terms of big, bold wines, the price point for Washington is dramatically lower than Napa. And that's a pretty exciting thing. I think the QPR, the quality price ratio for Washington, is one of the world's best. And I think that's super exciting. And I think that will be a trend that we see for a little while, until the world really finds out about us. Art is kind of, at the price of what people will pay for it, and fine wine becomes fine art at some point. But right now we are still on that quality, high producing wine level where we're matching prices to match the market, not necessarily the artist. And I think that's pretty cool. So I'm super excited for what's coming for Washington, what's coming for the 2019 vintage, and where the future lies. I think it's nothing but, bright skies and smooth sailing, though it will be a lot of work from year to year. Winemaking is not easy. Farming is not easy. I think the reason they call it farming is because gambling was already taken. So it's kind of a funny little trend you see there. You never know exactly what's going to happen throughout a vintage, and catastrophic things can happen. But we haven't seen that in the better part of a decade. We haven't seen anything truly catastrophic in Washington State since probably the 2002 freeze. So while we've had some cold years and some cool vintages, 2010, 2011, for example, we have had a lot of phenomenal vintages as well. And even in those cool vintages, the wines tend to age beautifully. If you have any 2010s or 2011s in your cellar right now and you weren't in love with them when you first got them, they are beautiful right now. Once again, this is a generalization, but I really like the way that these particular vintages have aged. They have a beautiful sort of perfumedness and floral quality that is kind of rare for Washington. We tend to be fruit forward in our wines and our style of wines. So these lovely tertiary aromatics like the rose petal, like the lilac, and the sort of violet thing that we have going on with the 2010 and 2011 vintage, I think that will trend for 2019 as well. I think these cooler days we've had in fall and the picking at lower sugar levels are going to make for a very complex, very aromatic wine that will have a little bit more of that floral component. So I'm very excited for that. Once again, thanks for listening. This is the Pacific Northwest Wine Novice, just doing a little bit of a vintage update and chatting about Washington wine. Cheers.